By primitive man's work when I was in graduate school in the university. I actually aspired to be an anthropologist at one point in my life and decided it was not for me, but I really love early man's craft and the kinds of amazing things that they could do. So as it happened, when I was at the University of Miami, they brought in an exhibit of Peruvian pottery, and I was fascinated by the colors and the slip designs, etc., that was on there. Plus the fact that I had grown up in Colorado, and I was familiar with Navajo and Hopi pottery, and so I really spent some time looking at it. And nobody knew a whole lot about how it was done. They knew that what Maria Martinez had done, and they knew that it was similar to Greek vessels, some of those gorgeous Greek vessels with the horses on them and everything. And then here we found them in the same kind of technique in Peru, which was low-fired pottery with a slip application that had been burnished. So I set out, and I knew that it was called Terra Sigalatta because that was what the Greeks and Romans and Italians called it. But I set out to replicate how early man did this. And so I did a lot of, it was primary source reading of what anthropologists had interviewed Maria Martinez about, and I tried out all the stuff that I read about, and even to the point where I made yucca brushes and tried horsehair brushes, and tried to boil, I can't remember the name of the plant, but there's a certain plant that you boil to get a residue out of it, and then that's where they get their black. And really what it is it's a sugary substance that they paint on the surface of the pot, and then carbon is left where that sugary substance was, even though you might have oxidized the piece. So I tried that, and I was moderately successful with that. But I was also interested in the Terra Sigalatta and the other clay slips that they used. Also, there's a group of people that are currently doing this kind of work, and they're fantastic in the Casas Grandes area of Mexico, New Mexico.
The Mata Ortiz.
The Quesadas, the Quesada family, and they do. Anyway, they do fantastic work. I don't know how I burnish like crazy, and I don't know how they get it as shiny as they do. They really do a nice job. Mm-hmm. But what I discovered in reading is that the natives who did this work, the Native Americans that did this work, had secret places where they got their slips. And they also lived in areas that were had monsoon in the mountains and dry all summer. So what would happen is there would be tremendous rainfall, rivers would flood all down into the valley, then they would sort of slowly evaporate and go away. And what was happening there is that the clay was settling according to their weight. And so they found, somehow they knew how to find those layers that settled the right stuff for their slips. And they were very secretive about where they had those, and they would run out, and then they'd have to find
no ball mill required.
No ball mill required. Mother Nature's.
That's where I was wondering with the early man about how we're going to get to the ball mill.
Yeah, Mother Nature's own ball mill.
Yeah.
So that was why they could. That's how they discovered what to do in each one of these areas. And I don't know that they all rose up spontaneously, but likely they did. And all discovered those things independently in their areas and developed their techniques. So
and developed them independent of one another.
Well, and I think that's anthropological theory that says that is perfectly possible. We expect man to be able to do that. Given the right conditions, they'll come up with some of the same solutions, and not that a trader was going through and saying, "Oh, by the way, isn't this a cool pot? I'll tell you how to make it." I mean, some of that may have happened, but I think it was spontaneous in each one of these areas.
Cultures.
Yeah. So, so you can make Terra Sigalatta without a ball mill. It's a little bit more difficult to get the colors that you want because the heavy metals, like this green is cobalt, and chrome, and this is blue, is cobalt, and then the iron oxide, and those are all heavy, and they settle out quickly, and you lose them from. So unless you ball mill those kinds of things, you tend to lose the color that they provide. So I ball milled and tried all kinds of solutions, and I brought some of these in. This is so ridiculous. It's, where did I put them? You know, I didn't redo them. This was done on a typewriter.
That dates you.
What's that?
I think it was an easy erase typewriter or something like that. But anyway, so these are I brought these in case anybody wants
The recipes.
So is Terra Sigalatta available commercially, or is it just only?
You know, I have never asked that question.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
And,
It's just
and
understood
Terra
you do it
Sigalatta
yourself.
is the very fine, refined clay.
It's the
Made up
you're
as a
trying to
slip.
get to the finest clay particles.
I can copy some more of these.
Yeah, you might want to copy some more.
This is not a mimeograph.
Yeah.
So do you slake it before you ball mill it, or yeah?
So
ball
what's
mill
really
it,
critical is that you have a clay mixture must be 70% water, 30% clay, and 5% deflocculant or calgon, or like calgon or Braxo or you know that washing additive that you use. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
borax. Arm & Hammer, borax, Braxo, calgon. So, and that helps to keep the clays in suspension.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a critical thing. 70% water, 30% clay, and 5% calgon. And then I worked this all out.
So you take a regular ball clay and then you ball mill it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah. And actually, I cannot tell you the challenge I had with my ball mill. I mean, I have a 40-year-old ball mill. So I couldn't get it to work. And I looked at ball mills, and they're $1,000 to purchase a ball mill. And I thought, I'm not buying a new ball mill. And I started this like in January. So I'm going like, okay, I've got to figure out how to fix this. I got my neighbor over, and he said, it's a friction issue, and I can't figure out what's going on. He couldn't figure it out. We tried all kinds of things, and couldn't get the thing to go around, and couldn't get the wheels to turn to make it go around. It turned, but it wouldn't make it go around. So I finally, YouTube is wonderful. I have to tell you, I went on the internet, how to fix a ball mill. And there it was, and so I went down. So I went down to an automotive supply place, and got a $40 hose. I went like $40 for this hose, really. And then I got a cheaper one. That he said maybe this will work. So I tried the cheaper one. Well, I could only get it on the rod halfway up, and then I had to cut it to get it all the way up, and then I couldn't get it off. So I'm going like, okay, that won't work. So I put the $40 one was stiffer, and it went on. So I thought, okay, I'll use that. Do I have to buy another $40 hose? And it works with the crappy hose on one of them and the $40 hose on the other one. And then my ball mill lid rotted out. And so it was leaking all over the place. And I tried to find a ball mill lid, and I couldn't find one. And they said, well, so YouTube told me, get an inner tube and get one of those strappy things.
I'll
and
make a.
So I did that.
Yeah.
But every time I tightened the strappy thing tight enough so it wouldn't leak, the strappy thing broke. So anyway, I ended up buying a ball mill. I mean, no, the ball mill jar. I ended up buying a new ball mill jar. But I have to tell you, shoe goo got me through for quite a while. But out of desperation, I made one of the ball clay will make a good slip without ball milling it. You don't really have to ball mill the ball clay because it settles out nicely.
And you can't do any of this by hand, or
No. I just mixed
I
up.
mean, if you didn't have a mill.
Yeah.
Well, or I
I was
oh,
thinking,
like
more
that.
margarine. And
God, no.
I think also, like, if you certain kinds of clay, like I did a black burnished workshop over in Jackson, and we didn't use Terra Sigalatta at all. We just burnished the clay. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you had a fine
Did
enough
you burnish
clay.
the clay when it was leather hard?
Right.
And
Yeah.
then, and
we
the
used oil and water and did it that way.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think maybe that's what quesadas do.
Yeah, Maria Martinez, I thought, did.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Well, what I read is it was apply dry,
Yeah.
and that might be the trick.
Yeah.
The challenge with applying the slip to a leather hard piece and burnishing it is it looks gorgeous and then it dries. And when you've got it like this, but it's still wet because it's got water particles between it. But when it dries, it goes like this.
Separates.
But we didn't. No, we didn't. What I'm saying is we didn't use slip at all. We just burned the actual clay body.
But it'll still.
And that's what
No,
it
didn't do it?
does.
No.
No?
No, I'll bring you a couple
I
pieces
should
I
try
made.
that. I should try
I bring you
that.
a couple pieces I made. They came out great. It's so much. Obviously, well, I don't see the burnishing is work no matter how you
Oh,
look
yeah.
at it. So
It's a tremendous
it's a
amount
lot
of
of handiwork. Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why I got away from this. I thought, oh crap, I just don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do.
I read that she used like a cactus gel, like a water from when she burnished in the
Cactus
desert.
gel.
Like they use like a water from the.
Yeah, we used oil in the workshop. Like we did water and then we did oil. We did successive layers of burnishing with oil.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
water.
I attended years ago again. I attended an Antica conference in which it was in Kansas City, I think, and the Caseta family was there doing a demonstration, and I wasn't able to see the whole demonstration, but he used oil, and he also used ceramic. And I didn't see all of how he did it, and I've tried to figure out how that was done and haven't figured it out, because anytime I use oil, it seems to mean the burnishing goes more quickly, but I don't get it. It doesn't seem to be any better. So I ought to try that.
Well, it's interesting the discussion about whether it's spontaneously, you know what I mean, the different cultures coming up with. Because my understanding of like the Mata Ortiz in Mexico, but also Maria Martinez, you can totally correct me if you're wrong since you did a thesis on it or whatever, but was that those were not a continuous tradition in those cultures, those were a revived tradition. So, like I know the Mata Ortiz, there was a guy who was finding pottery shards out in his yard, and he just thought, oh, how did they make this? And he spent all his afternoons trying to figure out how they made it. So he kind of like developed his own technique based on what he was finding in his yard. And Maria Martinez wasn't it an anthropologist or something?
Yeah, an anthropologist came to town and said to Maria's husband, and Maria's husband was working for him, showing him where the dig would be and where some of the sherds were and all that kind of stuff. And he said to Maria, the anthropologist said to her husband, do you think your wife could figure out how this was done?
Yeah.
And she took the shards and she started, yeah, my grandmother used to do this. I kind of remember, what she did, and that's how she got back into it, and that's how it... So
those are revived traditions, but some of these cultures have done it continuously. I mean, I was in a place in Costa Rica where they do burnishing and somewhat too, and low fire, but they've been doing it for thousands of years. Like they haven't stopped doing it.
They didn't lose the technique.
Right, they didn't lose the technique. It was handed down.
Well, and I think that's true. I mean, of the Greeks and the Romans. I mean, I know that was something. I mean, I don't know that they still do that kind of work, but the old Etruscan stuff that you see in museums is this gorgeous.
Yeah, is there an unbroken tradition? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either.
But Peruvian, I mean, that was unbroken until they the Nazca culture.
So figuring out the saran wrap and stuff was clearly something he figured out himself.
I know, yeah. So I don't have the magic thing. I'm just telling you what it is that I do and what I read and what I figured out.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I watched the Casetas do their work, are part of it, and I thought, I wish I was here earlier so I could have figured out what they were doing, because their stuff is fantastic.
I have actually a piece from Mata Ortiz in a book, so I'll bring it in tomorrow if I
bring
try
it
to remember.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Going back to something you said earlier about ball clay, is ball clay a powdered substance that we use in making glazes? We've got some of it back here.
Yeah, they're in some glazes. It's just a type of
very
clay.
fine clay.
I mean-
And did I understand you correctly to say that that ball clay can be used to make slip, or the Terra
Terra Sigalatta.
Sigalatta.
So I covet these kinds of buckets because they hold exactly. So for this recipe,
Wish we can get a
if I quadruple this recipe, times 4 this recipe, it comes up to about here in the bucket, and I can see through it, which means that I can see the layers. And everything you see says to siphon it off, and I quit. I got a mouthful of clay too many times that I decided not to siphon it.
That's why I'm coffee today.
So I just take it and I carefully pour off I use both the top and the second layer and pour that off, and then I take it into the kitchen and boil it down.
Baster would work though, one of those,
Yeah, you're right. That would work. I can get one of those.
They also have a gasoline siphon thing.
Oh, they have a special gasoline siphon now that you don't have to suck the gasoline into your mouth first before you.
Yeah, something like that.
See, it goes to show you 78, 2014 things
Technology
have changed.
has. Some things haven't changed much.
So
But then you take the 2 layers that you siphoned off, and you put them on the stove top and
I just reduce. I just
reduce
boil
it
out
so
the
it gets
water.
thicker,
So the
and then you would add your colorants.
no, the colorants are added when.
Small batches.
No, that's yeah. That's that one. No, that's that.
That makes a white slip.
So this is the white slip, and that's the thickness. Pretty much the thickness. It's kind of like heavy cream.
I expected it to be white.
And that's just ball clay reduced down several times.
No, yeah, it's ball clay that has been
Siphon
Now-
or
Hydrated.
layered, and then the top taken off.
Now, why isn't this one disintegrating as fast as that one? That's
It won't disintegrate.
Oh.
So what about a
Well,
Because it already had water molecules
It's
in it.
it's
Oh.
It was a little
it'll
hard.
stay like that pretty much. So it's because the water molecules were already there. They won't let go of their suction for the other water to get through. That's my
Wasn't dry enough.
scientific explanation.
We were
Oh,
here first.
that's so very
So do you ever make a white like with kaolin or?
No, because it's the kaolin's particles are not.
Yeah.
They're chunkier.
Huh.
I've never used kaolin because this turns white. That's the white that you saw in the other one.
Turns white when it dries.
No, it turns white when it's fired.
Fired.
I'll have to look at it again. I don't remember any really white stuff on your pieces.
Well, no. The
ones we
what I
took.
Oh, the ones out there.
Firing.
yeah.
Not from the show.
No, because the white
Yeah.
will absorb the black more readily than any of the other colors.
So like a kaolin slip probably just wouldn't be very burnishable, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It wouldn't be very burnishable.
And when you said oil, what kind of oil are you talking about?
Well, I tried everything. I don't know. I think they were using vegetable oil.
Yeah, just
Just vegetable
cheap
oil
old.
stuff.
Yeah.
So
Now I know there's a Raku clay, so do you ever think of just using the Raku clay when you do these types of things? The dung firing and the...
I'm not picky about my clay.
You're not picky about it.
No. Mm-mm.
It might take the thermal shock better. I don't know.
It's much
That's what I
more
was
gritty.
I
wondering.
don't know.
The problem with Raku clay is it is gritty, and
Yeah.
the grittier the
You
clay
want
is, the
to-
more difficult it is for you to get a
Yeah.
nice burnished surface.
Right.
Because even though you're putting a slip on top of it,
Yeah.
as you burnish, it still reflects what's underneath it.
Yeah. Some of the Raku clays are smoother than others, but it seems hard to find them. I don't know. Every time I get Raku, a lot of them have big
Well,
grog
that's
in
the
them.
nature of the raku, right, is to make it gritty.
Well, no, I mean, there's
No,
like
it's-
one or two of those bodies is fairly smooth, like that 215. I don't know,
Raku
but most of
clay
them are pretty gritty.
has a lot of already fired particles in
Yeah,
it,
yeah. It's a lot of
which
grog.
makes them more available to manage the thermal shock.
Yeah.
So, but anything can be pulled out of a red hot fire.
Maybe the grog particles are smaller in some of those, but it's still grog.
Yeah,
You know? Yeah.
yeah.
Something to try.
Okay,
Your
so
experiment.
you guys get doing making something. There's clay here.
Okay.
Pick your poison. We'll